I guess.
I think there's a threshold.
There's a threshold.
There is a threshold that it's not about, at least for us anyway, so I can't answer for every other business owner. I can only answer for myself. There's a threshold of an amount where unfortunately it starts to cross over, in my opinion, from putting the burden and responsibility of the outcome of whatever that service is, not just on the individual, but on the business. And the minute that threshold is crossed, because I am the business owner, I am affected, right? In other words, she comes back the next 2 times and gets terrible service, Rich, and she just gave us 10 grand. What do you think she's going to say? Beyond that, do you think she's going to say, hey, we gave this person 10 grand and the next 2 times we had terrible service? Do you think she's going to say that? Or do you think she's going to go online and slam the business and said that they let her give 10 grand to one of the employees and now the service has been god awful the last month? What do you think she's going to say? Let's be honest, Rich. Okay, great. So if we bear that burden of that negative blowback, right, if something like that were to happen, then that is when the threshold is crossed, and I think there's an amount.
Is that... You can stop my questions.
I love your questions.
I think of this as your
Keep going. I'm gonna take off this jacket because I'm dying.
Is that threshold changed by the okay, let's just say still 10,000, but it's for a Mercedes dealer, right? Like a salesperson. Let's just say a salesperson doing like a Mercedes dealer, right? Obviously, there's a lot more money in selling a single product. Is a $10,000 Visa gift card. Is that now different? Is there still like that burden of quality of service, or is it like, well, that's a fraction of the sale you just made?
I think a dealer's a bad example because dealers have rules for that already. Every dealer that I know has got rules for personal gifts items to salespeople.
Well, then just
so that's a bad example.
Does the
gross receipt of the product
does that
somewhere
change? If it's a high-end restaurant,
sure, okay,
right? A Michelin star. I'm sure they have rules too. I'm sure they have to have rules. Yeah. But let's just say, like, just morally, right? If I'm paying, I don't even know what they pay, a couple $1,000 for a dinner, right? And I want to tip $1,000. Like, is that does the price justify an increased? Like, does that change? Like,
yes.
Should it like?
I'm not saying should it. I'm saying it does.
Right.
The higher the ticket item, right? The higher the ticket item, then the higher likelihood of that dollar amount being relative to that going up, right? It's just like anything else, Rich, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's like saying, hey, I'm selling a $20,000 Kia, and the average commission on selling a $20,000 Kia in the entire country is $150. Okay, you'd be like, you have to sell a crap ton of Kias, bro, to make a living, right?
Right.
You go to a Mercedes store, and the average Mercedes, a Highline Mercedes, let's say is $125,000 to $150,000, and the average commission on a Mercedes is $3,500, right? Obviously, $3,500 is a lot more than $125, but it's obvious that the ticket item massively changes what that commission rate is.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
Kind of same scenario, right?
Yeah.
Right. So the higher the ticket item is, the more in parallel that is going to be with what that money is going to look like, in my opinion. I'm not saying it should be that way. I'm just saying that it'd be ignorant to think that it's not that way.
Right.
It is 100% that way. Yeah, it's 100% that way.
It's, I was just like, the ratio, because it's like, if you go to NPC, you spend $10-$12 maybe.
$20, $30
at a time.
Yeah.
So that tip is basically, well, not technically a 1-to-1, because this is multiple instances of him being helpful.
Yeah.
And multiple instances of her coming in. So let's just say she spent $100 over like last however long. So a fraction of that is the tip.
Yeah.
So it's probably, the threshold should probably a little bit over the amount that they've spent.
Sure. In comparison
to.
Sure.
Because it's like, if I go to a Michelin star restaurant and I am paying, I think the most I've ever paid for dinner is like $300.
Sure.
If I give a tip of $300, I think that's a little wild.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe $100.
Sure.
Like, that's fine.
Sure.
$500. I'd be like, okay, well, that's a little.
And I can tell you it's comparative, right? Because I can give you an actual example of that, right? So every year for the holiday season, we have a particular client that is a high value client that always wants a dinner that we essentially pay for. They book it. They decide where they want to go. We don't want to control that at all. They're out of the state, so I don't want to worry about booking and all that. I don't worry about that. Like we just tell them, hey, they tell me what's the head count. Like, hey, Jimmy, this is how many people are going, and this is where we're gonna go. That's it. That's literally all they tell me. And based on that, I already know on average what that dinner's gonna cost, right? Likewise, I have another client where they don't like, and again, I don't want to get into what's right or wrong. I'm just telling you what it is. Okay, so this is a live, actual, like thing that happens every year. I have another client, a group, that first one that I told you about, okay, they want to take everybody. In other words, they take all their managers, their finance managers, their closers, their desk people. So that group is literally usually 15 to 20 people. So it's a big dinner. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where I have another group that is the same. They want us to take them to dinner, but they don't want to take everybody. They only take like their top leadership team. So like department heads. So it's only like 4 of them. General manager, general sales manager, 2 desk guys, finance director. They don't even take their finance managers a lot of time, or sometimes some finance managers, but it's like 5 to 6 people as opposed to 15 to 20. You know what I mean? Both big organizations, that's just how they do it, which is fine. Who am I to tell them otherwise, right? Like whoever you want to take. The difference in those ticket items, as you can imagine, is vastly different, right? I every year I look to see what our average was for like the previous year. One group averages roughly about $1,800, between $1,500 and $1,800 for their dinner, and it's usually 5 to 6 of them. This other group has been averaging for 2 years in a row, including this year, $7,000 for a dinner. I just want to be clear, for a dinner. So every December, we pay that 7 G's in dinner for that client. Does that make sense?
Okay. I have questions, but yeah.
Sure, when you can ask me. But the tip amount severely varies in those two, right? And I generally tend to be a good tipper, especially if I get really good service. The average tip for that one group is probably $300 to $400, $300, $250, $300, right? The average tip for the other group is literally $1,000, $1,500 just in a tip. So it ends up being like $8,000, $8,500 dinner, all said and done. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about that for a second. So as much as it may or may not be, the reality is that it is relevant. It's relevant to the ticket item. It is relevant. Right? Like if I went to a dinner that cost me $7,500 and I tipped up $150, bro, I'd get laughed out of the spot. Hell, my client would be like, bro, don't do that. Like they know us here. You know what I mean? Like my client wouldn't be comfortable with that. My client would be like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like we don't do that. Right? So, and again, part of the tip, to be clear, part of the tip on the bigger group is guaranteed. Because whenever you take a big group like that, they automatically swipe 18 from the top or whatever it is, 15 from the top. So keep that in mind. So I am directly in a position where no matter what, I'm gonna pay a minimum of X, if that makes sense. 10% is $700. So let's say the bill's $7,000. 10% is $700. Usually it's 15 to 18% is automatic. So at 10%, it's already $700, right? At 15%, right? It's already probably about over $1,000, $1,100, right? So, yeah, give or take. That's at 15. So think about that for a second. Yeah. So you know what I mean? No. So, but yeah. Anyways. Yeah. So what's your question? So yeah, it's relative.
Well, why do the clients expect you to take them to dinner?
Well, again, that's also relative. Again, I know that it might be an unpopular answer, but it's true, right? The client that we have a dinner with, and it's usually $1,500 to $1,800. You know, it's let's call it, for all intents and purposes, it is I don't know, let's call it $1 million account, a little under $1 million, right? They're $800,000 account. Okay, so it's relative, right? Mm-hmm. If they're an $800,000 account and they expect a $7,000 dinner, I may have an issue with that. Sorry, you know what I mean? Like, I hate to say it, but it is relative, right? You're not spending enough. Right? It's got to make sense, right? Everything in business has to pencil, Rich. It has to, or else we're going out of business, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Whereas the other company that we take out is a $3 million account. So, yeah, when they are paying you more than $3 million a year for your services, guess what? The expectation, right, wrong, or indifferent, the expectation is what? We should be able to get a $7,000 dinner.
Right.
That's the expectation, you know?
Okay, hold on. Because
I used to have a client.
Okay.
We don't anymore. We used to have a client that automatically, even like the minute we started business with him, he told us, it's a 1% of my spend that we're going to ask you during the holiday season, period. We just want you to know that. And again, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it. I will say that I appreciated the fact that they told me that ahead of time. Because then what I did is I kept 1% of all their funds and put it on a slush fund, and that way I'd have the money to give back to them. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not saying I agree with that, by the way, but it was what it was. At that point, if you tell me ahead of time, then as a business owner, I 100% control the decision to take the account or don't take the account. Mm-hmm. So if I agree to take the account with the terms that you already told me it was, then I can't be mad at that. Right?
Yeah.
So I agreed to the terms, rock and roll. But that was the expectation of that business, was 1% of my spend. So in other words, if I'm spending $1 million with you, 1% of that we expect back in December for our holiday party. That was the expectation, period. And it just was what it was.
I'm okay. I mean, okay, that makes sense. Like, yeah, if it's at the door, if you're saying I want this much given back to me to show whatever, I'm your client, right? That makes sense because you accept it or not. But if it's not, and it's just as something that's just expected, that seems weird to me. Only from the perspective of let's just say, I have client A, B, and C, and client A, let's just say they pay me $700. I make them $10,000. Why would I pay for your dinner and you should be paying for my dinner, right?
Okay. That's your thought, right?
I don't have B or C anymore. B or C doesn't matter.
Sure.
Just the one client.
Yeah, we're gonna eliminate B and C altogether. Forget about B and C.
That's the main. That's my main thought. If you're paying me this much and I'm making you this much, you're the one benefiting from my services. I don't know how it works when you start getting into the 6-7 digits. I don't know, if you're paying me $1 million, am I making you $10 million? I don't know.
Sure.
Right. But if that's the case, it's you're why would I give you money back when you're benefiting more than I am from my service?
So a couple of things to say about that. One of them has nothing to do with my actual answer, but I'm going to say it anyways because it's important for the context, right?
Okay.
If someone's paying you $700 and you're making them $10,000, you're underpriced.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So let's throw that out there right now, right? You are underpriced. You need to charge more money, and you are underselling in the market. Period. the end, right? You're making someone $10,000. You're gonna charge $1,500 to $2,000, give or take, right? That is still in that's still a 5 net ROI. Does that make sense? So that's one thing. Okay, back to your actual question. So why should you be expected? Well, you're not expected to do that, right? You're not expected. You could do nothing, right? You could do nothing. You cannot take them to dinner at all, do nothing. Now, I think that if they ask you to take them to dinner, I think it needs to be comparable. In other words, if let's just go back to your example. If they're only paying you $700 and they want you to take them to a $1,500 dinner, I would probably say that you're being taken advantage of. I would say that your answer needs to be, I can't do that. Bob, I don't charge you enough to take you to a $1,500 dinner. I would love Bob to take you to a $1,500 dinner. Unfortunately, I just don't make enough of you for me to take you to $1,500 dinner. You know what I mean?
I'll take you to 2 for 20.
Like I don't think there's anything wrong, baby back, baby. That's how they kind of do things. But I don't think there's anything wrong with you saying that. Right? Hey, Bob, I would love to take you to this $1,500 dinner. Unfortunately, with our current fee structure, the economics they don't make sense. That's a nice way of you saying, you got your mind if I'm going to spend that kind of money with you paying me what you pay me. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm, you can't take 3 months of what you charge them to one dinner. Can't do it. Right? So that's the first thing that I would say. Now, let's assume that it is comparable. Let's assume that they're okay with Chili's, right? That dinner's going to cost you $200, $300. Okay. Mm-hmm. First of all, you don't have to do anything, but you have to understand how the game of business is played, period. Do you think that you are the only vendor in the world of the thing? Definitely not, right? Yeah. Because if you were the only vendor of the thing that you're selling them, you'd be a billionaire.
Right.
Because if there's only one product and they only can buy it from you, I hate to tell you, but you found the golden goose, bro. Right. Like you're a billionaire. Like we're not even talking about this conversation. So I would assume that whatever that product is, there's competition, right? Okay, great. Yeah. Then you need to understand the way the game is played. In the game of business, in the game of things like that, relationships matter. It is not so much that you pay for the dinner, so much as it's the fact that you went out of your way to take the time to take them to dinner. Does that make sense?
Okay.
right? So like, let me give you an example. We almost lost an account. As a matter of fact, it was that big account, the big dinner account. We almost lost the account, beginning of last year actually. $3 million account on the brink of being lost, right? Like, what do you think that does to my business, right? Do you want to know at the end of the day? And look, I'm going to take full responsibility. I am the president and CEO, so I run the ship. So, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you after all said and done what came out of it and really what the end problem was on why we almost lost the account and why they almost started to move in that direction, right? Here's the crazy part: it had nothing to do with our product. It had nothing to do with our service per se. It had nothing to do with any of that. Our product was amazing. Our service was amazing, better than anybody else's. Literally, after it's all said and done, you know what came out of it? On why that they were like, maybe pulling the trigger?
Dinners.
Because the agent that managed that account found out that I went to Arizona twice and took another dealer out to dinner and didn't make time to take him to dinner. Now, I want to be clear, right? He's well compensated. He makes great money. But that didn't matter. I went to Arizona twice on 2 separate trips and didn't even tell him I went out there. And I didn't even bother to tell him to let's go to dinner. I took someone else to dinner. And again, I'm not defending myself. They were 1-day trips. I went there, boom. I literally flew in that morning, took my dealer to dinner, and flew out that night. Like, it was literally a 1-day trip. Same day. Make sense? Right? And I had other things going on, and I know his schedule's crazy. That's not an excuse, right? I'm just telling you the ramifications of something that's simplistic. Literally almost lost a $3 million account because he felt like he wasn't important enough for the president and CEO to make time for him when I was in Arizona. Well, you have to know how the game is played. There are rules to the game, and you have to know what they are. And if you want to be in business and you want to be successful, guess what? You're in the game. You got to play the game, bro.
Yeah.
Anyone that tells you otherwise is lying to you. Now, there is a threshold that you cross where those rules no longer apply to you. There is, okay? But that threshold is monstrous, right? In other words, there's a threshold in value, right? That you bring, right? Net worth, self-worth, all of those things, that the minute you cross that, guess what? You make the rules. You make the rules. They're still rules, but they're no longer everyone else's rules. They're your rules. You get to make them. AKA, if you're a billionaire or you're worth hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.